One of the questions I see very often online is from new game masters asking experienced game masters how they move on after a really bad game session. So let's talk about that a little bit. Hey fellow game masters, I'm Richard Quiner, and welcome back to the Daily D20, your daily dose of all things tabletop role-playing, where I'm helping you build your world and master your game. If you like the content on this channel, I invite you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button for new videos every day. We all know game masters put a lot of time and effort into planning and getting ready to run their game sessions, even more than the time it takes to actually play it. They can spend all this time in preparing encounters, coming up with neat locations and new NPCs for the characters to meet. But what happens when it all falls flat and no one seems to have a good time? That's where these bad sessions come into play, and that's where you gotta have a certain mindset to be a game master, to carry you through those times, to get better at your craft and keep moving forward. The most important thing that I like to do whenever I have a bad game session is to take a step back and look at it from an outside perspective. I look at what I was doing and I look at what the players were doing, and I try to locate the time or the moment where things started falling apart. Maybe it was something I did as the game master to steer the players in a wrong direction that they didn't want to go, or maybe the players just didn't want to follow the story that I thought they really wanted, and maybe it just wasn't fun for anyone because we weren't on the same page for that session. If you take the time after a bad game session to really look at it and determine where you went wrong, that can help you move forward in a positive, successful way. A couple things that I almost always notice, and I can see it after even just a good session. If I feel like a session went really well and I succeeded in almost everything, I can still find a moment or two where I feel like I faltered a little bit. These kind of things that I notice are maybe the players aren't having a good time. If they seem distracted, they want to be on their phones rather than paying attention at the table, then that is a fault in the game session and something I need to work on, is making things more exciting and interesting for the players. If I find myself getting upset that the players go on an adventure that is not what I thought they were going to do, and thus wasting all of my precious preparation time, I have to remind myself that the campaign isn't about me telling the players a story, but it is about finding a story together as a team, and maybe the story that I thought the players wanted wasn't the one that they needed. And so that I think of that when those situations happen. And for me, 9 times out of 10 when I felt like a failure in a game session, it's because I made a ruling. Now, I firmly believe that rather than spend time at the game table looking into rules, you need to make a choice at the moment, then look it up later and move on from there, so to not slow down the game and to not draw people out of the moment. But 9 times out of 10, when I have to do that, I feel like I make the wrong decision on the ruling, or it's something that's not satisfactory for the players, if I can see that the players are clearly upset by my ruling, and it does weigh on me. But in those situations, I have to step back and take a more objective look at things where I'm not in the middle of it, and I can look at the rules, I can decide if I made the right ruling in that moment or not, and if I didn't make the right ruling in that moment, then I have to not beat myself up about it, learn the rule, and move on. After you've taken the time to define where your game session went wrong, that's when you need to make the choice of how you're going to move ahead and take action. There are several different options that you can take in getting past these moments, and the first big blaring case of something you can do is give up. You can quit. You can stop being a GM. No one is going to hold that against you. You can just end your game session, and the only person you really have to answer to is yourself. Do I recommend this course of action? Absolutely not. I think giving up on something if you really enjoy it is a big mistake, and it's better to learn from your problems in the past and move on. So that's where these other things come into play. If you've decided that your game session failed because maybe you as the game master are feeling a little burnt out, like you've been running games for weeks on end, every session, and it seems to be getting worse and worse, take a break. It's okay to step away for a little bit, for a week or a month or however long it takes till you feel ready to come back and continue being a game master. You can always ask one of your other players to see if they would like to be a GM for a little bit, so you can take the role as a player and find that fresh excitement that you once felt about the game. This is a recommended method because it is not a permanent walking away and quitting, it is just taking a step back. As long as you have a plan to come back, and as long as you do come back to the GM screen, that's the important thing, and I think that this is a valid way to clear your head, get over the problems that you think you have, and get back into it. When I find that I am the reason for the game falling flat, I usually try to look at it as a learning experience. Chalk it up for learning, find the lesson to be had in the situation, and move on. Try to change in the future. Make an actual effort to define what you did wrong, figure out how to fix it, and then fix it. It's a more active method of doing things. It takes more effort because you have to really look at yourself and what you may have done at the table, but it is a good way to move ahead and continue to progress as a game master. If you found that your game fell apart and it is a player issue, which sometimes happen, I'm not going to say the players are not at fault. Sometimes the players mess up, and sometimes it really impacts the game master and the game itself. If you find yourself in that situation and you can pinpoint the exact issue, the first thing you should do is talk to the players. If they derailed your story or what you had prepared because they wanted to do something else, the best thing you can do in that situation is talk to the players and find out what they actually want to be doing in the game. I was running a session a couple weeks back. I was running this new heist kind of campaign, and one of the players at the end of a session said, "I really like combat. I'd rather get into some fights." So now I know moving ahead when we have our next session there will be plenty of combat for them, and I will have to try and find the balance between the intrigue and the mystery of the city life and the combat dungeon crawliness that this player really enjoys. If the players really aren't happy with the situation or what they're getting out of the game, it's a good time to talk about it, because then you can either get on the same page or the players can leave. If you can't come to a compromise and find a good method of play that will work for everyone, it is okay for players to leave the party. It is okay for the GM to decide, okay, I can't play with this group of players, find a new group. There are tons of different options in this, but it all starts with just having a simple conversation, and I believe that 8 out of 10 times you will find a valid compromise and you'll be able to continue your campaign. And the last thing I like to remember when I'm having these bad days is that there is no such thing as a perfect game master. Even the most touted, respected game masters in the world have their bad sessions, and you are no different than them. They are no different than you. Everyone has some stinkers. But the difference, the thing that gets those game masters where they are and gets them as skilled in the art of being a game master as they are, is the fact that when they do have a real stinker session and everything falls apart and they leave feeling disheartened and disappointed in their performance and possibly the players, they don't stop. They get back on the horse, they learn from it, and they keep playing. So the number one thing I will say you need to do when you have a bad game session, and this whole video is to sum this up and kind of just remind you that you're human and it's okay, is just keep going. Learn from your mistakes, move ahead, and just keep trying, because that's the only way you're going to get better, and that's the only way you can get past a bad game session. Don't let that bad game session be your last. Make it another one of many. Look forward to your bad game sessions as learning experiences. So here's what I want to know in the comments below. Have you ever had a bad game session? I want to know the story. I want to know all the big stinkers that happened in your worst game, and I want to know what you did about it. So leave that in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like on it, and if you like the content on this page, remember to hit the subscribe and the bell notification so you get notified whenever I post a video, which is every day. Well, fellow game masters, I've been Richard Quiner. Thank you for watching.